Hi, hello, and welcome to my channel Easycology with Bud. I'm Anusha S. and I'm a postgraduate degree holder in M Pharmacy in the Department of Pharmacology. Today, I will be introducing you to a new chapter, Drugs Acting on Autonomic Nervous System, which is a vast chapter. So, I have decided to break down the chapter into smaller parts. And in today's lecture, you will be listening about cholinergic neurotransmission as well as cholinergic receptors. So, if you are listening to my video without subscribing, I suggest that you subscribe and then watch my video. Also, press the bell button so that you will be notified whenever I post a new video. So, let us move on to today's class. So, nervous system. We know that the functional unit of the nervous system is neuron, and the major function of the neuron is to communicate with organs and integrate the physiological functions. So there are two important categories under the nervous system. The first one is central nervous system, the other one is the peripheral nervous system. So central nervous system is going to be comprised of brain and spinal cord, whereas peripheral nervous system is going to be further divided into two categories. One is autonomic nervous system, the other one is the somatic nervous system. So autonomic nervous system is going to take care of all the involuntary actions that take place in the body. So like if you have to breathe, or if the heart rate, like the heart beating, so all these are involuntary actions, right? So these are going to be mediated by the autonomic nervous system, mainly by the smooth muscles as well as the glands. But all the voluntary actions in the body, for example, if you have to swim or if you have to walk, is going to be taken care of the somatic nervous system, which is mainly mediated by the skeletal muscles. Now both this nervous system, that is the autonomic nervous system as well as the somatic nervous system, is going to be comprised of two important components. One is the efferent component, the other one is the efferent component. So efferent component is going to take the information from the sensory receptor up to the central nervous system. So these are sensory neurons. It will take information from the receptors to the neurons. Whereas efferent neurons or the motor neurons will take the information from the central nervous system to the effector organ. So the efferent neuron with the E on it will take the information to effector. Now both autonomic nervous system as well as somatic nervous system is going to have the sensory and the motor neurons, but it is the motor neurons that is present in both these systems is going to be responsible for the involuntary and the voluntary action. So you have to remember this point. Now, if you ask me what is the difference between autonomic nervous system and somatic nervous system, there is one important difference, that is this autonomic nervous system. In autonomic nervous system, it takes two motor neurons to reach the effector. So one will be the preganglionic neuron, the other one will be the postganglionic neuron, and they are going to have different neurotransmitters to carry their functions. Whereas in somatic nervous system, it is going to take only one motor neuron to reach the effector. You can see in this picture, in somatic nervous system there is only one motor neuron, whereas in the autonomic nervous system there are two motor neurons. One is a preganglionic neuron, the other one is the postganglionic neuron. So you have to remember this difference. Now this autonomic nervous system is going to be further divided into three categories. One is parasympathetic nervous system, the other one is sympathetic nervous system, and the third one is the enteric nervous system. So again here this enteric nervous system can be considered as an independent category under the peripheral nervous system, or it can also be considered as a subcategory under the autonomic nervous system. So in different books it is given in different way. So here I will be telling that enteric nervous system is a subcategory of autonomic nervous system. So what is sympathetic nervous system? Again, sympathetic nervous system is also going to take care of all the involuntary actions, but here it is going to be taking care of the actions when the body is stressful or it is stressed. Okay, so like the pupil dilation or increased heart rate. So whenever our body is in stressful situations, it is the sympathetic nervous system that is activated. But whenever our body is in a relaxed condition, then it is the parasympathetic nervous system that is going to be in charge. So we call sympathetic nervous system as fight or flight and parasympathetic nervous system as rest and digest. If you see the enteric nervous system is going to be taking care of all the gastrointestinal tract functions, because it is going to line the gastrointestinal tract. Thereby it is going to take care of the secretions as well as the contractions in the stomach. So all these activities will be taken care of the enteric nervous system. Now what is the difference between the sympathetic nervous system as well as the parasympathetic nervous system? So sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight, whereas parasympathetic nervous system is going to be rest and digest. So where is it going to be distributed? Sympathetic nervous system is in the thoracolumbar region, whereas parasympathetic nervous system will be in the craniosacral region, that is in the top portion as well as in the bottom portion. So in the craniosacral region, that is in the cranial region, there are some cranial nerves that is having parasympathetic outflow. So I will just name these so that in case if you have to attend any MCQs, it will be helpful for you. So one is the oculomotor, the other one is the facial, glossopharyngeal and vagus nerves. So these are four nerves that are going to be having parasympathetic outflow. Now I already told you that in autonomic nervous system they will have the preganglionic and postganglionic neuron. So based on that, sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system is going to be different from each other. So in sympathetic nervous system, preganglionic neuron is going to be short and postganglionic neuron will be long, whereas in parasympathetic nervous system the preganglionic neuron will be long and postganglionic neuron will be short. Similarly, the preganglionic neurotransmitter in sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system is going to be acetylcholine. But postganglionic neurotransmitter for sympathetic nervous system is noradrenaline and parasympathetic nervous system is going to be acetylcholine. So this you have to remember. In parasympathetic nervous system, the neurotransmitter is going to be acetylcholine. So it is the acetylcholine that will be binding to the receptors and it is going to give the actions that are generally carried out by the parasympathetic nervous system. And in sympathetic nervous system, mostly it is the noradrenaline that is going to be released by the terminals which will bind to the receptors and show the activities that are going to be taken care by the sympathetic nervous system. So in today's class, I will be talking about the parasympathetic nervous system, that is the acetylcholine neurotransmission. How is the neurotransmission taken place in the cholinergic neurons? So first, how is it going to be synthesized? How is it stored? And how is acetylcholine released? And where is this released acetylcholine going to be acted? So that I will be covering today. And in next class, I will be telling you about all the cholinergic drugs. So first let us move on to the synthesis and storage of acetylcholine. So for the synthesis of acetylcholine, we require three important components. One is choline, next is acetyl-CoA, and third is the enzyme choline acetyltransferase. Okay, so choline is going to be taken inside the axoplasm by a transporter called sodium choline cotransporter. So now we have the choline. Next we require acetyl-CoA, which will be generally synthesized by the mitochondria in the terminal of the axon. Okay, so in the terminals it will be released by the mitochondria, whereas choline acetyltransferase is going to be synthesized in the perikaryon. This will be traveling all along the axon and will be released at the terminal. So now we have in the end of the terminal, we have choline acetyltransferase, we have acetyl-CoA. Also, choline has come inside by the sodium choline cotransporter. So, what happens next? Sorry. So, what happens next? So, this acetyl-CoA has to be combined with the choline. So, this acetyl in the acetyl-CoA will be transferred to the choline by the enzyme choline acetyltransferase. So basically there is acetylation of choline that is going on with the help of acetyl-CoA, and this is catalyzed by the enzyme choline acetyltransferase. So because of this, the acetylcholine will be synthesized. Now how is it going to be stored? So it will be stored in the synaptic vesicle. So that is like the final step, right? So the choline acetyltransferase will mediate the acetylation of the choline with the help of acetyl-CoA, and that synthesized acetylcholine will be stored in the synaptic vesicle. So all this is going to be happening in the cytoplasm. Okay, so now there is a vesicle and that vesicle is having the acetylcholine. So along with acetylcholine, there are also some other co-transmitters like ATP or VIP. So all these are other co-transmitters. So whenever the nerve is going to undergo depolarization, then voltage gated calcium channel will open. The calcium will enter in. So this synaptic vesicle, which is present in the cytoplasm, will go and fuse to the plasma membrane, and then there will be exocytosis occurring. That means the vesicle will break and the acetylcholine will be released. So that released acetylcholine will be acting on the receptors which is present. Okay. So that is the release. But now there is another problem. The released acetylcholine can be broken down by an enzyme called the acetylcholine esterase. So there are two kinds of acetylcholinesterase. One is the true acetylcholinesterase, which will be present in all the cholinergic site and instantly it will be breaking down the acetylcholine. Other one is the pseudo acetylcholinesterase or butyryl cholinesterase, which is mainly present in the plasma, and this is going to be breaking down the ingested esters. So this is an important MCQ question. If they ask you what is going to break down acetylcholine, it is the acetylcholinesterase enzyme. Okay, so this is how it is stored, it is synthesized, it is released, and it is broken down so that the choline can be recycled. Now in this entire step, in this entire neurotransmission at cholinergic neurons, there are various steps where we can target and inhibit this neurotransmission. So it is not necessary that always we have to inhibit the actions of acetylcholine. In some therapeutic purposes, we have to also increase acetylcholine. So I will be telling you in detail. Now I will tell you the drugs that are having the ability to inhibit various stages of this cholinergic neurotransmission. So first I told you that choline will be entering inside with the help of a sodium dependent carrier. So that carrier is CHT1 and that can be blocked by hemicolinium. Okay, so this is an MCQ question. It will be blocked by hemicolinium. So now once choline has gone inside, now this choline will be adding with the acetyl-CoA with the help of the enzyme, and acetylcholine will be produced. Okay, so this produced acetylcholine will be getting stored in the vesicle, right? So for that there will be a transporter called as VACHT, that is vesicular acetylcholine transferase. So that vesicular acetylcholine transferase will be inhibited by a drug called vesamicol. Okay, hemicolinium and vesamicol. Next is release of the stored acetylcholine. Okay, so for that we require exocytosis. That exocytosis process will be inhibited by botulinum toxins. Okay, so that is also one. And next is now the acetylcholine is released. That acetylcholine will be broken down by acetylcholine esterases. So if you have to potentiate action of acetylcholine, you have to inhibit this degrading enzyme so that acetylcholine can increase. So that is also one target. Acetylcholine esterase is also one of the target. Finally, this released acetylcholine will go and bind to its receptors, which is muscarinic acetylcholine receptors and nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. So you can either add an agonist or an antagonist according to whatever the nature of therapeutic activity you are looking for, you can target. So these are some of the areas which can be targeted. So I am telling you for an idea. Now I will talk about cholinergic receptors. So I told you that the released acetylcholine will show its action by binding to receptors. So what are these receptors? So these receptors are macromolecules where the drug usually bind to show its activity, right? So in cholinergic neurotransmission, there are two receptors. One is the muscarinic receptors, the other one is the nicotinic receptors. So why is it called muscarinic receptors? Because it will be selectively stimulated by a toxin called muscarine, and it will be blocked by atropine. So since it is stimulated by muscarine, it is called muscarinic receptors, and it is going to be present in almost all autonomic effector cells in the heart, blood vessels, eyes, smooth muscles, gland. So in all these areas, muscarinic receptors will be present. And there is also something called autoreceptors, that is, the autoreceptors will be present pre-junctionally, and if a drug is going to bind to these autoreceptors, it is going to inhibit the neurotransmitter release. So that is the autoreceptor, which will be not present in the post-junction, it will be present in the pre-junction itself. Okay, so that is also one thing you have to remember. Now, there are 5 categories of muscarinic receptor. You have to remember its location and what type of receptor it is, so that you can write the mechanism of action. So this is very important when you start learning drugs, so that easily you can write the mechanism of action. So you have to remember that muscarinic receptor is a G protein coupled receptor. So it has to be either one of these type, GS type, GI type, or the GQ type. So first receptor is the M1 receptor. So mainly this receptor is going to be called as neural receptor. Though it is present in other areas also, when you remember, just remember it is a neural receptor. So apart from the central nervous system, it is going to be present in autonomic ganglia, in the glands, that is the gastric and the salivary gland, and the enteric nerves. So this is going to be a GQ type of receptor. So whenever a drug is going to bind to GQ, then what happens? The phospholipids in the membrane is going to be broken down by phospholipase C to IP3 and DAG, that is inositol triphosphate and diacylglycerol. Inositol triphosphate is going to bring the calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum, by which the further functions will be carried out, whereas diacylglycerol will be phosphorylating further proteins and it will show the action. So this is going to be its mechanism of action, the M1 receptor drug. And if you see its functional response, since it is acting in the central nervous system, it is going to increase cognitive function, increase the seizure activity, decrease locomotion, as well as in autonomic ganglia, it is going to increase depolarization and it is going to increase the secretion. So you have to remember it is a neural type and it is going to be increasing the calcium. So secretions will be increasing and all the central nervous system activity will be increasing. Second category is the M2 type. So in M2 type, though it is present in other parts of the body, you have to remember that it is mainly present in the heart. Okay, so it's a heart type receptor and it is a GI type receptor. So GI type receptor, in the sense its mechanism of action will be to decrease the adenyl cyclase and decrease cyclic AMP. That is one thing. And second is to increase the potassium channel, that is to increase the potassium signaling by activating the potassium channels. And next is by inhibiting the voltage gated calcium channel. So calcium will decrease and there will be hyperpolarization and inhibition. So you have to remember the adenyl cyclase, increased potassium, decreased calcium, hyperpolarization. So that is the function of drugs acting on the M2 receptor. It is mainly the heart type, although it is present in central nervous system, smooth muscles and the autonomic nerve terminals. So since it is an inhibitory GPCR, you have to remember that in heart all the actions is going to be decreased heart rate, decreased conduction velocity, decreased force of contraction, and in neural region also neural inhibition. In peripheral nerves also there is decreased ganglionic transmission. So it is so all these are going to be inhibited. So first you have to remember M2 is going to be the heart type. And third is the M3. So though it is present in different parts, you have to remember it is mainly for smooth muscles as well as the glands. It is also present in heart as well as central nervous system, but mainly you have to remember about the smooth muscles and glands. So M3 receptor is going to be again GQ type. So it is the IP3DAG pathway. And if you see in the smooth muscle, all the smooth muscles are going to be contracted, and glands, all the glands are going to secrete. Okay, so that is the M3 type. So M1, M2, M3. M1 is the neural type, GQ type GPCR, and M2 is the heart type, GI type GPCR, and M3 is smooth muscles and the glands, which is the GQ type GPCR. So other than these three receptors, there are also other two receptors, that is M4 and M5, whose primary area of focus is in the central nervous system. So M4 is going to be in the forebrain and M5 is going to be in the substantia nigra. And if we see, M4 is going to be a GI type receptor. So again, decrease in cyclic AMP, adenyl cyclase, increase in potassium and decrease in calcium, hyperpolarization and inhibition. Whereas the M5 is going to be in the substantia nigra and it is a GQ type. So it will be increasing the IP3 and the PKC. So if you see, M4 is going to mainly act in the analgesia, feeling of pain, cataleptic activity and facilitation of dopamine release, whereas M5 is going to be in the drug seeking behavior and the reward seeking behavior. So these are less importantly focused, but M4 and M5 is going to be in the central nervous system. You have to remember this. So these are the 5 receptors, and if a drug is going to act in any one of the receptor, then I'm sure you'll be able to write its mechanism of action based on what type of GPCR is it. So this is about muscarinic receptors. Nicotinic receptor is not a GPCR, but it is a ligand-gated ion channel. So whenever the ligand is going to bind, the ion channel will open and then it is going to let ions in, and that is its mechanism of action. So here nicotinic receptor is going to derive its name from the agonist that is going to bind to this receptor, that is nicotine, and it can be blocked by tubocurarine and a hexamethonium. So these are like pentameric structures which is going to have a ligand-gated cation channel within them. Whenever agonist is going to bind, this ligand-gated ion channel will open and cations will be flowing inside, because of which there will be depolarization and generation of the action potential. So this is its mechanism of action. Now if you see, there are two types of receptors, NM type and the NN type. NM type is going to be in the skeletal muscle. So whenever the nicotine or whenever a drug is going to act in the NM receptor, it is going to cause the contraction of skeletal muscle, whereas NN is going to be present in the autonomic ganglia, adrenal medulla and central nervous system. So in autonomic ganglia, it will cause depolarization. In adrenal medulla, catecholamine release will be there. And in central nervous system, based on the site, there will be inhibition or excitation. But you have to remember, NM is for skeletal muscle contraction, NN is for the autonomic ganglia depolarization, adrenal medulla mediated release of catecholamines, and central nervous system activation or inhibition. So if you see what is its nature, so as I've already told you, it's like a pentameric channel, and it's a pentameric channel that is going to have a ion channel within them, which is a cationic channel. So whenever the channel is going to open, then sodium and potassium can go in and go out, and based on that it is going to give its mechanism. So there are also selective agonists and antagonists for these two receptors. So this is about the muscarinic receptors and the nicotinic receptors, that is the cholinergic receptors and cholinergic neurotransmission. In next class, I will be talking in detail about those drugs that are going to act like acetylcholine. That is, they will be having structure which is very similar to acetylcholine. Thereby, they will go and bind to sites where generally acetylcholine will bind and show its actions. We will also learn about acetylcholinesterase inhibitors, which are going to inhibit the enzyme that degrades acetylcholine, thereby increasing the levels of acetylcholine in the body. So this we will be seeing in the next class. And today's did you know is that I previously told you that botulinum toxin is going to inhibit the release of acetylcholine from the synaptic vesicles by inhibiting exocytosis. Similarly, there is also black widow spider toxin, which induces massive release of acetylcholine and thereby depleting acetylcholine. So these are two toxins that will interfere with the cholinergic transmission, and this botulinum toxin is also going to have a cosmetic application. That is, whenever there is wrinkles, this Botox injection is being injected into that area so that this facial wrinkles will be removed. So this botulinum toxin or Botox injection is also used as a beauty treatment. That's all for today. I'll meet you in another class. Thank you.